Greetings and welcome. We are now going to jump into our beginner level project for this workshop. So the first thing I want everybody to do is to go to File and make a new scene, and do not save, save changes if you want to. If you did something, some work of art that you want to hold on to, by all means save it, but I'm not saving it. Next, we need to make a new project. That should always be your first step. When you're when you're creating anything, you should always have a project for it. I mean, if it's anything you want to keep, if it's anything important. So let's go to File, Project Window. And what I want you to do is just click on New, and name this. I'm going to call this Workshop Project _2, because you guys might have realized this is the second time I've done this workshop. And that's fine. That's great. So I'm not going to worry about changing any of the existing folders. We'll leave everything else their defaults. We'll just have our name. Please make note of the location. This is generally the default location for Maya. It's in your users folder, your name, documents, Maya, projects. It's a good place to store stuff unless you have a very tiny C drive, which I know some people do. So go ahead and hit accept. As soon as you've done that, as a safety precaution, I always try to advise people to do this. It's not the most necessary thing in the world, but I advise you to do it anyway. One more new scene. That just makes sure that you're now associated with that project. You probably were anyway, okay? It's just one of those, it may be superstitious at this point, but it is one of those older Maya throwbacks that I just have a hard time, getting past. Okay, so now, what we're going to do is, actually, do you guys want to see an example of what we're going to do? Do you guys want me to just show you the final animation first? Would that make you happy? Give me a yes or no, or do you want to be surprised? Wick says yes. There's a couple of other yeses. One surprise. Risen Force wants to be surprised. Does everybody want me to put the beat down on Risen Force for being different? Because basically I think we should punish difference. I'm just kidding. No. I'm sorry. I'm not as funny as I think I am. Let's open up F-Check. And I'll show you guys how to open that up a little bit later. Let's give this just a moment. File, open animation. And, oh, see, there's Workshop 1. Here's what we'll be doing tonight. So it's got to load in. It'll be a little sluggish at first. It's very simple, but a lot of really cool concepts get covered in this, okay? So, did everybody see it now that it's played through about 6 or 7 times? Good. Let's go ahead and close that. Yes, I want you to do that in one night. As a matter of fact, we're going to do that in about an hour or less. It's a very, very simple thing as long as you know how to do it. I'm going to give you a really kind of nice workflow. Yeah, it is really shiny, Saturn. Just deal with it. It's a nice shiny floor. Don't be knocking on my shiny floor, buddy. Okay, what I want you to do is to make sure that you have pressed F3 and you are in the polygons menu set. We may not ever use those menus, but I want you to be there anyway. Also, make sure your shelf is set to the polygons tab. Next, I'm going to click on Polygon Cube, and I'm not just going to drag out a cube like I did before. We're going to be a little bit fancy, a little bit precise here, and here's how I want you to do it. Hold down the X key. Now, what are you doing when you hold down the X key? If you divert your attention up to the status line, you'll see that the Snap to Grid button gets highlighted every time you hit X. So hold that down. Also hold down Shift. So you're holding down X and Shift and just drag out a couple of units, like so. You'll end up with a perfectly cube-shaped box that should be about 4 units to a side. If it's not, if it's 5 units or 6 units to a side, that's fine. It won't kill anything. So, no panicking. Not at this stage of the game anyway. As soon as you've done that, press the 5 key to shade up your view. Okay, so we're going to turn this into a letter block, and we're going to do that in a couple of different operations. The first thing is we're going to make the little frame around the outside of the block, or if you want to look at it another way, we're going to make the recessed areas into which the letters are going to go. And here's how we're going to do that. I want you to hold down the right mouse button on top of your cube and choose Face from the marking menu. This allows you to select faces, as you might have guessed. And I want you to hold down Shift and select all of the faces. Navigate around, make sure you get all 6 of them. They should all be highlighted this really ugly orange-brown color that Maya's been using for years now. Next, we're going to do an extrusion. And this is kind of fun. I'm going to show you guys the shortcut to get to extrusions. Hold down the Shift key and the right mouse button. For those of you who are my polygon modelers who have experience in other 3D apps, it is very nice to have all of your primary modeling functions right here under Shift right mouse. But here they all are. Go down to Extrude Face. Now, when you see this widget, you're there. This is where you want to be. And I want to show you how this works. I'm just going to pull this blue arrow out. Don't worry about how big or small. I'm just demonstrating something. You'll notice that right now the block is getting universally bigger and smaller, like uniformly. That's not exactly what we want. In your channel box, which should be exposed right now, if it's not, make sure that you hit your channel box button. Make sure you can see the channel box. If you get stuck, let me know. I want you to scroll down. You'll see under Poly Extrude Face 1, one of your attributes in here is called Keep Faces Together. And for some really silly reason, it's set to on. I want you to switch it off. There's a couple of ways to do this. You can type the word OFF, or you can just type a 0. They do the same job, and press Enter. And take a look at what you get now. Now when you pull the arrow, you get this. I want everybody to get to this point and let me know via your ready status. If you're working, set your status to 1 minute right now. I need everybody to update. If you hear my audio cut out from time to time, it's just me either grabbing a drink or coughing. I'm just muting before it hits you. Risen Force says, I think messed up cube, so I have to remake. Marilyn says that she's getting a weird effect. Well, here's what I'm going to do for everyone. Watch this one more time, okay? I'm going to go through the entire process. If you're having problems, stop and watch. Do not try to work while I'm working. If you're having problems, delete whatever's in your view. If you can't delete it, if you're trying to delete it and you're getting weird things like holes in your shape, press F8 to go back to object mode and press delete. You're going to start all over again. If you need to, just go to File and make a new scene. That'll work too. So File, New Scene. So, one more time. Click on the Polygon Cube button. Hold down X and Shift. Click at the very center of the grid and just drag out a couple of units. If you see a perfect cube, you've done exactly what you should have done. Those of you who are kind of catching back up using this method, let me know in BuzzNet if you have a perfect cube. Give me a yes or an okay. Marilyn's all over it. Awesome. Next, we're going to do an extrusion. And we're going to take a look at its properties when we do. So, Shift and right mouse. Actually, let's not do that first. Just right mouse, excuse me. Let's just hold down the right mouse button and select faces. You need to select all 6 faces. Hold down Shift to make sure that to make sure you're clicking them all. And tell me yes when you have all 6 of those faces selected. So I want to see at least 3 yeses pop up right now, or as soon as you get that done. This allows me to see where the hassle's popping in. So there's 1 yes. Marilyn, where are you at? Select me 6 faces. Select all 6 sides of the die. Can't turn the cube around. You're not turning the cube, you're navigating the view. Remember, Alt and left mouse. I realize it's a lot to take in because you just started using Maya for like the first time. But Alt and left mouse, Alt middle mouse, and Alt right mouse need to very quickly become like second nature, or you will get very frustrated very quickly. All right. So do we have all 6 of those sides selected yet? Everything went dead. Nobody's talking to me. All right. No, it's okay, Marilyn. I just need to know where you are. You got to keep me in touch. So I'm going to do it again. I'm going to hold down right mouse and hit faces. Now, Ryan, I'm trying to help some people catch up, okay? So let's play nice. Marilyn, do you want me to take a look at your screen? All right, here we go. Ta-da! When you're ready, just click the show screen button so that we can see. Oh, I think I can hear you too. Hello?
I'm working on a different computer.
Uh-huh.
I have two computers on. One is on the webinar. You can't see my screen because I don't have the computer that the webinar is on.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
I'll try to follow on as much as I can.
No problem, no problem. We had to give it a try though, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
No problem. All right, let me press the mute button over here. Perfecto. And show my screen again. Okay, well, once you have all 6 of those sides selected, you need to perform an extrusion. Now, Marilyn, if you do get too far behind, remember this is all being recorded. It'll all be put up for streaming probably tomorrow. And if you need to, you can just follow back along with the video. In the meantime, if I do something that looks like significantly confusing, you want me to elaborate on it, you can always ask questions, and I'll help out in any way I can. Okay, so shift and right mouse and choose Extrude Face from the marking menu. The problem right now is that all 6 of these sides are extruding together. They're staying connected, and we need to break that connection. The way we do that is over inside the channel box. We set Keep Faces Together to 0 or off. And then we can move all 6 of the faces individually. Ryan, please play nice. I really don't appreciate that kind of thing, okay? We have other people, and they all learn at different paces. And every pace everybody works at is perfectly okay. All right. Now, what we're going to do is take local translate Z, which is what I was updating with my little arrow here. I'm going to set that back to 0. So it looks like we have an extrusion that's not really doing anything. In effect, that's exactly what we have. We're going to make an inset. Now to do that, we're going to scroll down to local scale, which is currently set to about 0.1. Remember that virtual slider trick I showed you a little while back? I'm going to highlight local scale X, Y, and Z, and middle mouse drag that down to about 0.7. Yeah, I'm really sorry there, Ryan, but there was a time just a few minutes ago when you were the person that we were really waiting on for just a few moments, and I didn't see anybody in BuzzNet say thank God when we finally got on. So I don't really appreciate hearing it from you. Okay, then I misunderstood and I apologize. Okay, so let's go ahead and do our next extrusion. So now check it out. We've got this nice little inset. We've got these frames, and they look amazing. I want you to make sure all 6 of these little frames, or the insides of these frames, are still selected. And then we're going to do another extrusion. Time for a hotkey. Everybody ready for a hotkey? Press the G key. The G key will repeat your last operation. Then just push that little blue arrow in a little bit. Is that not awesome? All right. When you're done with that, when it looks like it's inset about as far as you want it to be, and you can kind of use your judgment. You'll notice if you go too far, though, you get overlappage. So just a little bit will be fine. If you want to do it by the numbers, I'm pulling in about negative 0.4-ish. Okay, awesome. When you're done, press F8. This will take you back to object mode. And I want to do a ready check for everybody who is following along to let me know they made it to that point. Now, I didn't mean to get too stern with you there, Ryan. It's just I do try to stick up for my students. I would do the same for you. I might not do the same for Wick. I'm just saying. I don't know what to tell you, Wick. Actually, Ryan, it would probably be a good idea for you to go over this a couple of times. Probably start. I know you weren't, Ryan. It just looked like you were from this one thing. I realized you weren't making fun of Rich. Just right as we started going again, I saw "Thank God" over in BuzzNet, and if that was taken in that one way, then I can't stand for that in the classroom. But now I understand that you weren't. I apologize, and we are trucking on. We are moving on. Yeah. I realize that it is nice that all this stuff is being taped, so you can go back and listen to it again and again and again. Okay, no, I'm kidding, Wick. I'd do the same for you too, man. Okay, so now here's the next fun part. I'll give actually, I'm going to pause the video and give just a couple more minutes for people to catch up on the video. I just had a question about redoing the insets. I'm going to do that during a pause. So if in just a second you see the video jump or if it looks like things flipped around a little bit, it's just because I'm going to rebuild everything really, really fast during a pause. So we'll be right back. Yeah. Okay, so now we're moving on. Now we're going to make this cube a little bit more visually interesting by rounding out its corners. And here's how. Hold down the right mouse button and choose Edges. And 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's all the ones on top. If you accidentally select somebody inside, and you'll know if you do, by the way, because like I'll try to click on somebody and I'll miss. But sometimes, like if you try to click on something but the one you click on doesn't highlight, you might have just missed. So I want to get the 4 on top, the 4 on the sides, and the 4 on the bottom. That's 12 edges in all. Just 12 edges. Rotate around a couple of times and make sure that you only have those edges selected. Once you have those selected, shift right mouse and choose Bevel Edge. I'll say it again with a cool tone of voice so you don't forget. Bevel Edge. Blam. Now, we can take the offset and we can adjust that a little bit. I kind of like 0.2. I think that looks pretty good. And I'm going to take the segments and kick those up to 2 as well. And that just puts some nice rounding at the corners. Now, because I know somebody's curious, I'm going to do all of that again real quick, okay? So, yeah, if you undo too far, Shift Z. Right-click, choose edges, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Shift right mouse, bevel edge. I set my offset to 0.2. I set my number of segments to 2. That's it. So if you press F8 and deselect, nice rounded corners. It's beautiful, it's magical, it's mystical, and everyone is impressed with you, including me. All right, I'm going to do one more bevel and then I'm going to do a ready check. So the next one, you're going to get the inner edge for all of these frames. Now, I don't want you grabbing the ones all the way at the back, so just these ones out here at the front. So there's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. We're so close. 21, 22, 23. I'm so tired of clicking. And 24. You want all 24 of those edges selected. Then shift right mouse again and bevel. And this time we'll pull the offset to about 0.3 and the number of segments to 2 again. Though if your numbers are a little different than mine, that won't kill you. It'll be just fine, I promise. Okay, so I'm going to press F8 to go back to object mode, and I want to do a ready check for people to get to this point. And I'm going to pause the video. All right, Wick is failing at beveling, and so I want to kind of make an example of him. So, I'm just kidding. He needs a hand, so I'm going to right-click and jump over to... I can look at you, Kenneth, here in just a minute. One crime at a time. And right now, my criminal is Mr. Wick. Thump, 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 thump. You gotta click the show screen button, dude. Otherwise, we can't see. Oh, hey! Beautiful. Wow, the feedback is so slow, and your resolution must be just insane right now. All right, do me this favor. Just rotate around that real quick. Okay, yeah, I'm getting really slow feedback because your resolution is like so astronomically higher than mine, which that's funny. But just with those selected, hold down Shift and right mouse, and choose Bevel Edge, and let go. Oh, it's happening, but it's a really, really tiny bevel for some silly reason. Okay, let's see here. Give me just half of a second. Let's see. I can't take over your machine, even though I would like to. Let's see, request keyboard and mouse control. Ooh, can I have keyboard and mouse control, please? Oh, this is so slow. Okay, but I'll try to make the most of it anyway. Now, it says the bevel is there. So what that tells me is that we need a closer look at what's really going on with your vertices. Whoa, we're really flying around too. So let's right-click and go to Vertex. And I want to do something else too, because I'm curious. If we go to Window, oh my God, everything is so small. Display, heads-up display, poly count, and I grab these vertices. How many verts does that say? I can't even see, because your resolution is so high. Tell me how many that's actually showing. Ryan, hold down the right mouse button over your object and choose Edges. That's showing 60 vertices? Oh my God, what have you done? Okay, hang on. I'm going to get to the bottom of this. This is hilarious. Okay. Dink-a-dink-a-dink-a-dink-a-dink. I want to know what you did. Divisions are still at 1 with that extrusion. All right, well, that's good. Keep faces together is off. What happens if I just grab this guy? Come on, Maya, you can do it. Work with me here. And I just pull this out. What do we get? You have vertices on top of vertices because you did a double extrusion and didn't move the second one. So here's what I say we do. We press F8 and hit delete. And we start all over from scratch, where we hold down X and Shift, and we make a brand new cube. And we grab all the faces. I guess I shouldn't sing. Probably nobody wants to hear me sing, but I got to do something to keep myself entertained. Oh my God, you're super high resolution. I'm getting like 1 frame a year, I think. It's amazing. All right, so now Shift and right mouse, and I'm gonna sing to keep Risen Force awake. And we're going to extrude face. This time we're just going to do one extrusion and not multiples on top of each other. I'm going to click Keep Faces Together. At least I think that is. It's so tiny. And set that to off. I'll take my local scales. Actually, let's do it from here. Let's do it manually. And set all these to 0.7. Bink. Perfect. Then I'll hit G. And I'll take local translate Z and set that to -0.4. And that should be good. Now, can you still use your mouse so I don't have to keep doing this? Good. Hey, awesome. Try your bevels now, man. Just like grab one edge. You're going to undo it. I just want to make sure that the bevel's working. Shift right mouse. Bevel edge. Bink. Perfect. All right, undo that. And then make sure you select all of the edges, also, what is it, 12 of the edges around the outside, and you should be good to go. So yeah, what was killing you is you had the extrude sitting right on top of another extrude. I thought I saw an extra extrusion node in there, and now we know. Okay, so I'm taking control back from you, because I think you're good to go now. Okay, and here's my screen. Who else was having problems? I feel like there was somebody else. Bump, 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 bump. Well, if you were, you're not speaking up, so speak up in a minute. Please update your ready status and let me know if you have a beveled cube now. Wick, your status should be set to 1 minute because it won't even take you that long to finish. What about you, Ryan? How you doing? Give me feedback. Get back to me. Let me know where you are. How's it going? How's things doing? That's right. That's you moving your mouse over to BuzzNet and typing a response in. Kenneth's webinar's on another computer. Yeah, I understand. That does make it a little hard for me to see what you're doing. Ryan, are you still there? You still with me? You didn't leave me, did you? I'm going to miss you. Ah, I have a cube that's recessed but on the wrong ways. You want me to take a look? Give me a yes or no. What were the settings for the inner bevel? I believe they were 0.3 for the offset and 2 divisions. Yeah, let's take a look at your screen. Attendee list. Ryan, I'm switching back over to you now. And if I recall, you do not have a mic, which is kind of sad. I kind of want to hear you speak. Oh no! What have you done? You've broken it. It's all so broken. Yeah, that is kind of in the wrong ways. Can you show me... click on Poly Extrude Face 1 over on the right-hand side in the channel box, if you don't mind. There you go. Scroll down a bit. In the channel box, scroll down a little bit, excuse me. Okay, all that looks kind of fine, but it also looks like you may have moved some stuff around. Can you undo that extrusion for me? I mean, just spam the Z key for a minute. Let's watch what happens. Just pound on that Z key, man. Just drill that thing into your keyboard. Oh, yeah, it looks like something got moved. You see that? Oh, yeah. Keep undoing. Keep going. Undo, 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 undo. Grave amounts of undoing. Oh, there it is. Keep going. We're not done yet. Oh, now that's looking good. That's more like what I want to see right there. There's where things started to go wrong. And what it looks like is you had those 6 faces selected and you moved them, and you should not move them. Rotate around this guy. Hold down your Alt key and middle mouse drag and spin us around a little bit. Just give me a shot, like if I wanted to see the whole thing. Press F real quick to frame up on it. Okay, now just give me a nice fly around. Rotate me around the whole thing. That looks beautiful. So what I want you to do now is another extrusion. Hold down Shift and right mouse. Choose Extrude Face. You'll get Poly Extrude Face 2 over there in your channel box. And rather than worry about anything else, I want you to scroll down until you can see Local Translate Z. It's about midway down your list right now. Click the number field and set that to -0.4. Press Enter. Beautiful. Actually, because your block is a little bigger than mine, let's kick yours up to about 0.5. It's okay. I mean, we're kind of playing this by ear anyway. That's a little bit better, I think. All right, now, can you go ahead and bevel your edges for me? You want to hold down the right mouse button on your object and choose Edge. It's up. There you go. Now select those 12 outer edges. All the corners, basically. Well, corner edge. You see, you don't click the actual vertices. You want to click the edges at those corners. So up a little. May I have control of your mouse and keyboard for just a minute? You should have got a request where I just asked for mouse keyboard control. So hopefully you did. If you didn't, it would be over on your little webinar panel, wherever that's hiding. Okay, well if you can't find it, that's no big deal. Oh, well, something just flickered. That looks important. All right, let me see. Am I able to move now? It seems like I am. Okay, I'm going to do you a couple of quick favors. There is a select all, Marilyn, but you probably wouldn't want to select all in this case, because there's some edges we are not beveling and we are using different settings. If you selected everything, you'd end up with the same settings on every edge, and we don't want to do that. I'm going to tap the B key, and that's going to put away this whole soft selection thing. At least I'm going to try to. I think my feedback is a little bit sluggish right now. So let's make sure that I have edges. All right. So I want this edge, and this edge, and this edge, and this edge. So it's just these outermost corners, right? And then here, and here, and here. And I'll grab these two because I happen to be staring right at them. See if I can spin us around. Such sluggish feedback. All right. Come on. Come on. All right, and there's that. Let's see, did I miss anybody? It's not reading my B key, which is kind of awkward. So let me see if I can do something real quick. You have the move tool active, or do you? I wonder if you have a different style of keyboard than I do. Because there are certain keys that are not responding the way I want them to, but that's okay. Let me do this. Pull this over. Slow with the feedback. Oh, are you fighting me with the mouse? Please pull your hands away from the mouse for just a minute. Stop fighting me. I'm going to turn off soft select. There we go. Okay, good. I was trying to do that with the B key, which is the hotkey for doing that, and it wasn't responding, which may be some fundamental difference in our keyboards. But you see the edges that I'm going for. So I'm going to let you have control back. Make sure you get all 12 of those edges at the corners, okay? Rotate around as you need to and make sure that we have all 12 of those, that I didn't miss any. Don't worry about the ones on the inside of the frame. Just get these 12. You want to rotate around. It looks like we have everything from this view. Oh, now you have to start over unless you tap Z. There you go. And you'll rotate us around to the back side from here. Just hold down Alt and spin us around. That's looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and do a bevel. Hold down Shift and right mouse. Bevel is to the right. Release. Rotate around. Make sure everybody beveled. Make sure you didn't miss anybody. Because if you did, you need to undo and make sure you get that edge. When you're satisfied, which I think I am, Over in the channel box, set offset to 0.2. Nope. Click away. Click on the view. Well, there you go. Set offset. Nope. Just stop digging in your menus, bud. Look right there under Poly Bevel 1. You'll see an offset property. Set that to 0.2. Segments set to 2. There you go. That's all there is to it. Now, there's a vanity bevel that we put around the inside of all the frames. So what we were doing is we were selecting all of these edges. So there's, hang on, don't fight me. Let me have the mouse for just a second. So, boom. We were grabbing all of these. There are 24 of them in all for each side. We did another bevel that had an offset of 0.3 and subdivisions of 2 once again. So if you want to do that on your end, go ahead and that should get you all caught up. Meanwhile, I'm going to go ahead and move on from here. So I'm going to make myself presenter, and you should be good to go at this point. But again, that's kind of a vanity bevel. You don't really need it. Maryland asked, where's the bevel command again? It's under Shift, right mouse. There are actually a couple locations it is, but I think Shift, right mouse is probably the easiest place to get to it. Okay, back to fast feedback on my own computer. That's so nice. The next thing we're going to do is create the letters for each side of our block. And here's how we're going to do that. Go to Create and choose Text. And then hit the little options box right next to text. So once again, Create, Text, Options box. So this will give you some text you can create, and what I'm going to create is lowercase a, b, c, d, e, f, g. Actually, first, let me just reset all my settings. This is what you get by default, okay? This is really easy. Just punch in whatever letters or numbers you want. I don't care which ones you use. They're all the same to me. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. If you want to use blocks to spell out a word you shouldn't, that's fine too. Next, under Type, choose Bevel. That's it. Those are the only things we're changing. When you're done, click Create. Here's what you get. You get a stack of letters. Pretty cool, huh? The problem is that all of these letters are one singular object, and that doesn't help us at all. So here's how we're going to solve this. First off, with this object selected, hold down Shift and right mouse and choose Separate. That was Shift and right mouse and choose Separate. I want a really quick ready check to see if everybody's made it to this point. Okay, so once you have all of your letters and you've separated them, again, that was just by holding down Shift, right mouse, and choosing Separate. I want you to just go over to Window, Hypergraph, and open up the hierarchy and take a look at these letters. They're all parented to this poly surface group node, and that's a pain in the butt. We don't want to do that. So I'm going to select all those letters, so you can just select them right here in the view and hit Shift P. That will unparent them. Now they are all individual objects. There's a problem with this. If I select all the objects in my scene, take a look here inside my scene hierarchy. We still have that group that was containing all of our letters just a moment ago, but right now it doesn't do anything. It should be called Polysurface 1 or similar. Select it and delete it. It won't do anything. It doesn't do anything. In fact, that's why it needs to go. So your scene hierarchy should just be flat. It should be the cube and then all of the surfaces that make up our letters. The problem is right now, these names are very ambiguous, and it'd be a good time for us to rename our objects. So let's do that. I want you to select your block, and in the channel box, click on its name, which should be pcube1 or similar, and we're going to name this letterblock_base. It's the base geometry that forms our letter block. Now you'll notice I use some special casing here. This is not a requirement, it's just a format that I like. This is camel case for the word letter block because it's kind of like one term. But then I have an underscore to designate another part of the name, and I'm calling this base. So here, I'll name the A letter block underscore A. And letter block underscore B. And so on. As a matter of fact, to speed myself up, I'm going to grab letter score underscore and just hit Control C to copy that to the clipboard. So I can hit paste, C, enter. Select D, paste, D, enter. Paste, E, enter. Paste, F, enter. Paste, G, enter. Okay. Now, I'm going to do a really quick ready check to get it to see if everybody gets up to this point. All right, we're going to take a quick look at Ryan's screen real quick. All right, it's all you, man. And let's see, I see that you look like you've turned on the resolution gate, but that doesn't look like a big deal. If you move this up, you've spelled out Maya. Let's do this. I'm going to delete this out. Let's go back over to create text, but then open up the options box. And what this allows you to do is to specify exactly what text you want to create. Go ahead and type in 6 letters or numbers, anything that you want to use. You need 2 more. No spaces. Okay, click on the bevel radio button. There you go. Click create. Don't worry about the properties, we're not changing anything. Click create. And there you go. Now move that up into the air. All right. Now, that is all one big polygon shape, and that doesn't help us one bit. So what I want you to do is to hold down Shift and right mouse on top of that letter, on top of those letters, and choose, oh, no, don't do that. Let go. Q. There you go. Shift right mouse. Oh, I'm sorry, you're in a tool right now. Press the Q key. There you go. Shift right mouse. Don't move the mouse until I tell you. Move straight down. You'll see separate. It's in the menu. Right there. Perfect. Release. Perfect. Okay, now, next, I want you to go under Window, Hypergraph, Hierarchy. See how all of your letters are parented under that group node? We're going to do something special with you. You're going to do this in a slightly different way than everybody else did. Just go ahead and close out your hierarchy. Actually, no, leave it open. I want you to do something very fancy. I want you to go under Edit, very top. No, not the very top. The next edit, the one actually for Maya itself. There you go. And go down to Ungroup. It's almost down at the bottom, but not quite. Okay, well, I thought it would work. All right, just hit Shift-P. Now, take that Polysurface 1 node, the one that's not selected. Yeah, kill that. Select it and hit Delete. That needs to die. Just hit the Delete key. You'll be fine. Good. Now you need to rename everything. So close out the hypergraph. It's just going to get in your way. Select your cube. Give this a meaningful name. I'm not going to be restrictive on what naming convention you use. Just pick a naming convention and stick with it. Nope, that's the shape node. You want to name the transform node, which is pcube1. It's up from that. Up. Right there. Click on that and change the name. The shape node will actually update its name in concert. It'll just take whatever name you punch in, and it'll add shape 1 to the end of it, which is really nice. Press enter. See, now it's play lock shape, which is very, very cool. Now select the R. I would go with playblock_R for the name, but you can do whatever you want. All right, I think you've got this from here, so I'm going to go ahead and take control back. Okay, so there's one more thing I want to do. I want to be able to move all of these blocks around. The problem right now is that their pivot points are all right here at this location in front of the A, and that makes moving them a bit of a pain. So what I'm going to do is select all of these blocks, and I'm going to go to Modify, Center Pivot. What that did is that put the pivot point for each letter right at the center of the letter. Okay, so again, that was Modify, Center Pivot. All right, next step. We need to get all of these letters slapped to the sides of our block, and there's a really fast and easy tool to do that. Select each letter and go to Modify and choose Snap Together tool, and watch how this works. Once you activate the tool, you'll click on a surface, like the back of your letter, and then click where you want it to go, and press Enter. You'll get this nice little line showing you what's going to happen, and press Enter. Now, I got really lucky just then, and it looks like that was magically centered up. It's not. You still kind of have to move it around a little bit. I would move it, and I would also sink it a little bit further into the surface. Go ahead and take just a moment and do that with your remaining letters. Now, again, that's under Modify, Snap Together tool. Just click that, click on a letter, click on where you want that letter to go, and press Enter. Now, see, you may need to move it. You also may need to scale these letters a little bit, so don't be afraid to do that. If you want to re-invoke a tool that you've already used, you can do that with the Y key. So you can just press Y, click on another letter, click, and there you go. And in this case, this C also needs to be rotated, which that's all right. If I hold down J, I might be able to get a nice 180 out of that, which would work out really well. Scale it up slightly. And again, make sure it's nicely recessed and about even with your outer frame. Okay, and we just continue. So Y to re-invoke the tool, click on the back of the letter, click where I want it to go, press Enter. And then just make those little minor adjustments. Ryan, as soon as you can, let me know in BuzzNet how you're doing, please. I put an extra letter in there. That's great. Let's grab E. Let's put that on top. Said, I'm snapping them together, but the cube is being connected to the characters instead of the other way around. I have no idea what that means, so I'm going to take a look at your screen again. Show me. Clicking in the wrong order. Don't click on the block first. Hit backspace. Click on the letter first. You select what you want to move and then where you want it to go to. Click, press Enter. Boom. You're good. And you just have to do a little bit of rotating and sizing and whatnot. Okay. I have one more letter to place. So just press Y, click on the back of the letter, click on the surface, press Enter. Once again, move, position. It's pretty good. And there we go. All right. Now you have one last thing I want you to do. I want you to select everything with a big marquee selection. And you're going to do two things. The first is go to Edit, Delete by Type, and choose History. Delete out all that nasty history that's been building up, because there has been some building up. Next, hit Control G. That is going to group everything together. Now, actually, you know what? Undo that. If you hit Control G, undo that. I have to show you something. You need to go to Edit and go to Group and hit the options box for your group. I'm going to show you this. Even if you just did hit Control Z, it's not like all is lost. But by default, your group pivot is going to be set to the origin. So you're going to get this. Your pivot point will be at 0, 0, 0, meaning you'd have to go to Modify and choose Center Pivot, which is fine. You can do that. But there's a faster way. If you go under Edit and go to Group and open up your options, you can just tell your pivot to be at the center of the object you just grouped. And there you go. So now you end up with a group with a pivot to the center. To move what? The pivot. The pivot is the point from which you are moving the object. Let me show you what I mean. Right now, if I hit Control G, you see where my pivot is? So if I rotate this block, you see it's rotating dead from its center, because that's the location of the pivot. However, if I move the pivot, which, by the way, you might not have noticed this, but Maya actually tells you how to do that. Use Edit Mode to change pivot, or hit the Insert key. So if I hit Insert, I can drag this over, press Insert again, and now if I rotate, we're rotating from out here. That's what the pivot point is. I know, Risen, I caught on, but I figured I might as well go ahead and finish when I was done, you know? So let me hit Z and back up one, and I'm just going to go to Modify and center the pivot again. So if you don't want to hit Control G and then center the pivot, you can tell the group command to just do that for you. So I'm going to pause real quick, and I want everybody to tell me when they have a grouped block. The interesting thing about a group is that it's just parenting. It is just parenting working on its own. So if we go back to Window, Hypergraph, and open up the hierarchy, we have a single group node, which I need to name this. I'm going to name this letterblock_GRP for group. So I have one master transform node. That's what that is. And then everything is just parented to it, just like they were just, parented, like normal parenting. If you just hit Shift P. But if you want to move everything as a group, you have to select the parent. Now, earlier when I was talking about the status line, I mentioned this button up here, which is Select by Hierarchy, and I said we wouldn't need this until later. Now we can use it. So if I just select the cube, I'm just moving the cube, and that doesn't help anybody. If I set this to Select by Hierarchy, and I click, we grab the highest level of the hierarchy, in this case the group node, and I can move stuff around. So that's pretty cool. Okay, so Ryan and Risen Force, I am going to have to kind of move on. We are, it is getting later and later, so I'm going to have to kind of chug along. We now need to create our set, which is really, really easy. To do this, all I want you to do is come over here to the polygon shelf, click on Polygon Plane, and just drag out a big square. I don't care if it's perfect. It just needs to be relatively centered up. It doesn't even have to be exact. Just some sort of surface for our block to sit on. And with that, we're done. We have created our entire scene, that all of the pieces that we need anyway. We now need to move on and create some materials for them. Okay, Now if you want to, if you need to catch up really fast and you just want to get the animation stuff down, you can ignore your letter block and you can just create a regular polygon cube and follow along from here on out. And it will still work. And you use the rest to just catch up later. So what we're going to do is create some materials for our letter block. And here's how we're going to do this. Let's go to Window, Rendering Editors, and open up the Hypershade. Now I'm just going to show my work area. I'm going to do this by clicking on Show Bottom Tabs Only. And I want you to watch this fairly closely. I'm going to middle mouse drag a Phong material into the scene. Immediately, I'm going to right click and rename it. So hold down the right mouse button and rename this. I'm going to call this Matte, so I know it's a material. Letter block underscore red. Can you imagine what color I'm going to make this? To change its color, I'm just going to double click on it and just click on the color swatch, and Saturn was right. I'm going to make it purple. Now we're going to go ahead and make this a nice shade of red. Now I generally don't go for super saturated tones. They generally don't show up very well on TVs and whatnot, so just something a little bit muted but still, you know, nice and vibrant. Now there's one property I want you to remember. You can play with all these properties if you want to. Cosine power is going to change the tightness of your specular highlight to make things look shinier. Specular color will make that specular highlight more intense. But see reflectivity? Reflectivity, I did see a question from Kenneth that I don't know how long it's been there. It says, can you just parent the letter to the base so they move along with the base? You can, but that's not part of the lesson. I mean, it won't hurt anything though, so if you just want to do that, that's fine. A lot of the stuff that I'm doing is kind of just academic in nature. You know, I'm just kind of showing you things. Okay, so reflectivity is how mirrored this surface is. Slam this all the way back over to 0. If you don't, this thing will catch reflections and it just slows down your render time and it doesn't even look very good. So we're going to go ahead and leave that at 0. Where did you get the color? Once you have created your material, I'll create like a spare one real quick. Once you've created it, over in its properties, just double click on it and you'll see the attribute editor pop up. And one of the first properties at the very top is color. So you'll just click on its color swatch, and I realize this color swatch may not be the most intuitive thing on planet Earth, but you drag around here inside the little block and find a color that you like. If you want another hue, you can use the ring on the outside here. Okay, so again, make sure above all that reflectivity is at 0. Once you've got that, I want you to duplicate this material. So just hit Control D and that'll make a duplicate. Now notice here in my attribute editor, the name of this is Matte Letter Block Red 1. We're going to change this to Matte Letter Block Blue. And then just scroll up, change the color to some shade of blue. I'm going to duplicate that. We have 6 sides of our block, so we need 6 colors in all. So let's do yellow. Click my color swatch and pull that over to yellow. Control D again. This one will be green. Control D again. Let's make this one orange. And then finally Control D. And I guess this will be purple. And make sure you name it. All right, so a really quick pause, ready check while I make sure that everybody has their 6 materials. Okay, let's continue. We need to get this applied to our object, or these 6 materials. Now this is pretty easy. First thing I want you to do is just middle mouse drag each color onto one of your letters, and you'll see immediate feedback in your viewport. So, C and D. And who did I miss? Missed orange. And then purple's going to be hard to get to. If you're having a hard time getting to what's on the underside, grab your floor and just hit Control-H and hide it. Or you can move it out of the way, or you can delete it and make another one. There's a million ways to skin a cat. Okay. Now, that gets our colors on each one of our letters. I'm going to duplicate any one of these colors. It doesn't really matter which one. And let's jump back over. We're going to name this matte letter block white. We're going to change the color to white. Again, the easy way to do that is grab the slider, slam it to the left, slam it back to the right. And I'm just going to apply this to the block. Just middle mouse drag that right onto the block. Okay. Next part's easy, but it does take a little bit of concentration. So if you're not up for concentration, this will be frustrating. Let's start with the letter A. Watch this. I'm going to right mouse and choose faces. And I'm going to select these actually, let me get out of select by hierarchy mode. It's just making things complicated for me. So make sure that I can select faces. And I want to select these 4 faces that make up the primary shape of the frame. You see these, the great big wide faces? Now with those selected, I'm going to hit Shift, period, which is also kind of like the greater than symbol. What that does is that expands your selection out once. So once again, let me do that one more time. Grab the primary faces of the frame and just hit Shift, period. That expands your selection out. Now, you need to grab the insides of the frame as well. So that'll take you just a second to click on each face. Once you have those selected, you'll right mouse on that material, the red one because it associates with the letter A in this case, and choose Assign Material to Selection. And this shows that you can assign materials directly to polygon faces. You don't need a special material to do it like you do in some applications I could mention. So if you missed that, I got to do it again for B anyway. So here we go. Select your block, Shift, or just hold down right mouse and choose faces. Grab the 4 primary faces for the frame. Shift, period to expand your selection. And just grab these last few faces here on the inside. Hold down the right mouse button over the appropriate material and just choose Assign Material to Selection. If you still missed it, I have to do it again. Select the 4 faces. If you want to get really fancy, go ahead and select 1 level in. Or 2 levels in. Yeah, I guess it'd be 2 levels in on each side. It's the same number of clicking, whichever way you want to go. And then hit Shift, period. You just want to make sure you go out to that seam and just right down to the base here, but you don't actually select the base. And this is yellow, so right-click, Assign Material to Selection. The 7th material is just white. That is giving us the base white background where our letters are all mounted. So once again, main faces of the frame, Shift, period. Grab these little faces on the inside. Right mouse, Assign Material to Selection. Four faces, Shift, period. Grab the additionals. Right mouse, assign material to selection. I think I assigned orange, or I assigned red, but I meant orange, so let's just reassign orange. You can do it a couple of times, it doesn't matter. Last time, so if you don't get it this time, I'm going to have to repeat myself. So watch. 1, 2, 3, 4. Shift period. Grab the faces just on the inside. Right click, assign material to selection. That's it, you're done. You have modeled and added materials to your letter block. So I'm going to pause the video and I want people to catch up. I do have a question from Ryan regarding specular color, which shouldn't be a factor here, but let's have a look anyway. That is BuzzNet. That is Maya. It looks like you may have a bug going and your color picker is just not appearing. You may have a rogue color picker which is sitting somewhere off screen. I've seen that before. Excuse me a moment. If I was in your shoes and windows weren't popping up, I would really quickly hit Control S and I would close and reopen Maya, because that looks like a window bug. Maya can be a little bit like a computer sometime. It's just, it gives you grief and you just kind of need to restart it. Don't worry about things like this scaring you, Ryan. It's really just one of those things where once you get the swing of it, it doesn't even slow you down. I've been using Maya for years, and I've used it on several professional projects, and it works. And so have a couple of other people, and it turns out that it's still an extremely reliable piece of software. Window, rendering editors, Hypershade. You want to show your upper tab, so show both your tabs. There you go. To the right, to the right, to the right, to the right. Show both of them. So it's the third button there. Move up, 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 right, right, right. You sunk my battleship. Okay, cool. Now, yeah, just double click on any one of those materials you got there. And that should bring up the attribute editor somewhere. Double click on it again for me. Oh, your attribute editor I think is on the left. I think you've moved it on me. No, it's not in your Hypershade. You need to move your Hypershade to the right to get it out of your way. That is in fact your left. Keep moving it. Keep moving that window. The whole window, man. Don't split tabs on me. Ryan, stop. All right, hang on. I'm going to see if I can bail you out here. I'm not worried about this list. I want you to get this window. Don't fight the mouse. Just stop. I want you to get this window out of the way so that we can see the attribute editor. See, what you've done is, and I watched you do it, you moved the attribute editor to the left-hand side of the screen. So, I mean, if you wanted it to be over where it normally is, you could grab this bar and just drag it over here. And now you'll see something a little closer to what I'm working with. I'll try to save you a little bit of screen space. You do not need your tool settings right now, so I'll go ahead and put those away for you. Now, your problem earlier is that your specular color wasn't working, which really for our purposes isn't particularly important, but now if you click on the color swatch, you do get a color picker. So it looks like just that window was bugging out a little bit and wasn't showing up. So it's just one of those things where it's once you get the hang of it, you'll really quickly just hit Control-S, restart Maya, and just make that happen. But honestly, right now, this is the first time I've ever actually seen that happen. So if that's any kind of a consolation. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move back, make myself presenter. Okay, so it is now time for us to make that shiny floor that we made earlier, or that you saw earlier in the demonstration. So here's how we're going to do that. Let's go ahead and show our floor again. I'm going to go to Window, Hypergraph, Hierarchy. This is just still called P-Plane 1. I need to rename this. So let's go back to the channel box, and I'll just call this Floor. Now, with it selected, you'll see it's kind of grayed out as a node. That means it's hidden. Select it, and what did we use to hide it? Can anybody tell me what we used to hide it? What the hotkey was? Anybody? Over inside of BuzzNet, just to see who's paying attention these days? Nobody can tell me. Control-H. There you go. Woz gets the cookie. Hit Control-Shift-H, and you'll show it back again. Now, I have a texture for you to use if you would like to grab it, and it is located here. I'll let that sit on the screen for just a minute while you write that down because I realize this is Photoshop. So at this point, you should have that file downloaded. So this time, we're going to create a material using the new node editor for Maya 2013. It's not really that different of a way to work, but the cool thing about the node editor is that it combines the hypershade and the hypergraph and the connection editor all in one nice, cool looking window. To get to it, you need to go to Window and open up the node editor. It kind of teaches you how to use it all in one fell swoop. It says press Tab to create a node. That's perfect. So I want you to press Tab and type out, once again, Fong. You might have noticed I have a thing for Fongs. They're very lightweight. So click on it, press Enter. This will make a Fong node. You'll also see the shading group node. We're not too worried about that. You can navigate this with Alt middle mouse, Alt right mouse to zoom in and out. Now, if you accidentally click on this little tiny icon, it's not going to be in Maya 2012, by the way. Is anybody here using Maya 2012? Okay, you won't be able to actually do this part using the node editor, so what I'm going to do is I'll show you how to build this using the node editor, and then I'll take just a second and I'll slap it together using the old-fashioned hypershade, unless you think you can do it on your own. Alright, so there's a little icon in the upper right-hand corner of all these nodes, and the way this works is it allows you to choose how much detail you want to see. So you have no detail, which only shows what's currently connected, medium detail, which is just the major outputs, and then you have everything. Make sure that you're showing everything. I want you to right-click on this node and rename it. We're going to call it mat_floor. Okay, next, hit Tab and type in File. I want you to create a file node, and you'll see File Texture. Click on that and press Enter. Now this will bring you two nodes in. You'll get a Place 2D Texture node. This guy comes in automatically, and he's responsible for how your texture is going to tile across the surface. And then you have the File node itself. Double-click on the File node. It's going to open up the attribute editor. There's an image name property pretty early down on the list, and it has a little manila folder next to it. Click on that, and then navigate to that texture that you downloaded from me. Just double click on it. Now this is pretty straightforward. We're going to take the out color of file 1 and plug that into the color of matte floor. You're just going to left mouse drag. It's very intuitive. Just plug that straight over into color. Give yourself a little bit of room between the material and the file. Kenneth, once you actually have to, excuse me, once you have to dig through the connection editor over and over and over again, you'll realize that this is significantly faster. I can slap materials together 2 or 3 times more quickly using the node editor than I can using the old-fashioned way. True story. All right. Next, we're going to make a bump map using our existing color data from file 1. So I want you to hit Tab and type bump 2D. I'll make a bump 2D node. And I want you to take, and this is where we get a little bit fancy, okay? Take a look at your out color. There's a little plus button next to it. I want you to expand that. This image doesn't have an alpha channel, so what we're going to do is take out color R, which is the red data. So it's like a black and white image that represents where red goes on the picture. And we're going to plug that into bump value. Then you'll take the out normal of bump 2D1 and plug that into normal camera. You've already got a bump map. As a matter of fact, if I wanted to really show it off to you, let's just take matte floor, and I'm going to middle mouse drag that onto my floor. I'll hit the 6 key out here in the view, and then I'm going to do something kind of fancy. Let's go to renderer, and I'll set this to viewport 2.0. Actually, let's try high quality. And you can already see that I've got a lumpy, bumpy ground. In fact, it's a little too lumpy, bumpy. So to fix that overly lumpy bumpiness, we're going to set a very specific value to bump depth. I'm going to say negative, so it's actually an inverted bump. So negative 0.01, maybe negative 0.02. You can play with it on your end and see what you think looks better. So you see, you just get a little bit of lumpy bumpiness that goes along pretty well with the wood grain. Not bad, if you ask me. A couple of other things you may or may not want to play with in terms of your material. You can adjust your cosine power to tighten up your specular highlight a little bit. And I would pull my reflectivity down. Again, if you crank that way up, you're going to have like a perfectly mirrored surface. So we're going to pull that down to about 0.25 or so. But just remember, you can update this on your own end if you want to. Take care, Marilyn. Okay. So what I want to do is give a quick pause, and I want people who are using the node editor to get to this point. Okay, so here's the exact same example using the Hypershade for those who need that. Let's go to Window, Rendering Editors, Hypershade. In the work area, I'm going to middle mouse drag out a new Phong, and I'll immediately rename that to matte underscore floor. I'm going to give this an extra name. So matte floor Hypershade. Next, we need a file node. It's already right here in the list. I'm just going to middle mouse drag this right onto matte floor and connect it straight to color. It comes in with its place 2D texture node, just like so. Double-click it, or double-click the file node, excuse me. Click on the little manila envelope and its properties. Select Furniture Base Wood, which you should have downloaded. Open that up. Next, we need to connect this to the bump map. We're going to do it in kind of a fancy way. So I'm going to hold down Control. Actually, let's just try this. Let's see if I just plug this over to bump map, what do we get? Oh, that'll work. We can do it the old school way. So just middle mouse drag and choose bump from the list. If you need to see that again, middle mouse drag straight over and choose bump map. That is going to choose out alpha, which I didn't do in my case, but that's okay. Slightly different. Take your bump depth value and set it to -0.02. If we apply this and give it a quick rotate, it looks pretty much exactly the same. The only other changes that I made is I tightened up the specular highlight by increasing cosine power and then pulled reflectivity down to about 0.25. Okay, so there's the material in both ways. So if you need to catch up at this point, please go ahead and do that. All right, we have our scene nicely textured. The last thing I want to do is go ahead and light it. So I'm doing this in a slightly different order than I did it last time, but we're going to keep our lighting very, very simple. I want you to go to Create and go to Lights and make a spotlight. Now you won't be able to see this by default, so make sure you tap the 7 key to see the result of your lighting. Also make sure your renderer is set to high quality so you can see exactly where the spotlight is pointing. And what I want you to do is move this light up into the air. It'd be a good idea to pull it off to one side. Now I'm going to be filming, just so everybody understands, I'm going to be filming kind of from a 3/4 view, and I want my light to be sort of over here with the camera. So I'm going to rotate this very slightly, something about like so, to kind of a nice angle across everything. In the channel box, you can increase or decrease the cone angle of the light as you need to. Also make sure you give the penumbra angle a little bit of attention. That gives a nice little bit of softening around the edge of the spotlight. Now, we need to activate some shadows, and here's how I want you to do that. If you go under the Attribute Editor, with your light selected, make sure you have Spotlight Shape 1 selected, and scroll down to the Shadow attributes. Ignore Depth Map Shadows. We want to use Ray Trace Shadows. Set your light radius to about 3, and set your shadow rays to about 8. And here's what this does. Let me go ahead and give you a quick demonstration. I'm going to hit my render button, and this will probably take just a second to render. Oh, actually it's going to take half a second. I need to switch to mental ray. So whatever you're doing right now, did you want white behind the letters, asked Ty? I put white behind the letters. If you don't want to put white behind the letters, you don't have to. I want everybody to activate their mental ray renderer, and here's how you have to do this. Please make a note. Stop whatever you're doing. You can catch back up in a moment. Do this now. Go to Window, Settings Preferences, Plugin Manager. Once again, that's Window, Settings Preferences, Plugin Manager. Scroll all the way to the bottom. You should see Maya to mr.mll. Make sure that's checked loaded and auto load. It's very important. So once again, one last time, Window, Settings Preferences, Plugin Manager. Maya to mr.mll, loaded and auto load. When you're done, click Close. Now here's the cool part. Open up your Render Settings window. It looks like a little clapboard with 2 circles next to it. Under the Render Using dropdown, choose Mental Ray. We can go ahead and close that, and now when we render, it takes a second longer, but we get these really nice, elongated, softened shadows. Now, if you want to see the difference between those 2 shadows, I'm going to do something real quick. Let's save this. So what I'll do is I'll click Keep Image. And then back over here in my shadows, I'm just going to say my light radius is now down to 0 again. And I'll render one more time by clicking the little clapboard here. And look at the difference. Regular shadows, softened shadows. So soft shadows are pretty sweet. So let's set that back up to about 3. So it looked pretty good. Now I'm going to do something I didn't do in the last class, mostly just for fanciness. You can do it if you want to, but you don't have to. I'm going to take my spotlight and hit Control D and duplicate it. I'm going to pull it around to the other side of the scene and rotate it back around. So we're getting kind of cross lighting. But then I'm going to turn the brightness of this light way down. If we scroll up to the top, its intensity is at 1. I'm going to pull this to about 0.15. And if I can get my camera back where it was, I'm hitting the left bracket key to cycle back through these, by the way. And let me open up my previous render. I'll go ahead and keep this image as well, or keep my hard shadow one. And we'll do one more render. So now, where earlier we had black shadows, you can see there, they go completely black. Now we have just a little bit of light coming in that shadow. Where was the soft shadow stuff? No problem. You can find that underneath Ray Trace Shadows. Well, all you're doing is increasing the light radius. By default, Maya is going to calculate this light as if it was an infinitely small point. By increasing the light radius, you're giving it the simulation of that light having a larger surface area. The catch to that is that you need more shadow rays to keep the shadows from getting too chunky and nasty. Now, 8 is a very low number, and that's actually going to make our shadows look kind of terrible. On your own, you can crank this up to 16 or any number you want, really. You can lift it all the way to the ceiling. But just know that those shadow rays really slow down your renders. Okay. Now, guys, I'm afraid I've got to kind of do a strafing run at this now, okay? We're past midnight here, and I've got to kind of move along. So I'm going to go through this at a steady pace. I'm not going to fly, but I won't be doing any more pauses, okay? And I do apologize for that, but this class has gone on for quite a while now. So we have everything textured. We have it lit. We can do a nice render. Now it's time for us to get to animation. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the concept of keyframe animation, it's easy as an understandable concept. The idea is that you will create, let me go ahead and just kind of do a really quick demo graph of the idea of keyframe animation if you're completely unfamiliar with it. The computer offers you a graph where you have time, generally in frames, but not always, and you have some attribute value. And all you do is you set a point, known as a keyframe, saying at this time, which would be 0 in this case, we want an attribute to have some value, which could be 0, could be any value. And then later on in time, maybe 30 frames later, we want to have this value, which could be something like 10. The computer will automatically plot a curve that meets both of those points, so that as you move forward through time, instead of just blinking from point A to point B, you gradually move to that location. That is the heart of keyframe animation. Like, I just basically explained keyframe animation to you in one go. So let's go ahead and do some really basic animation. Before we do, I'm going to select my block, make sure that I'm in hierarchy selection mode so I can just click and have the group. And I'm going to move this block forward to right about here. I'm going to hit Control D and duplicate it and move this copy of the block back here. So I have 2 blocks now. Now let's take this block and I'll move it off to the side. Give it a little bit of rotation. Hit Control D again and make another copy. And we'll rotate this guy around as well. So now we're just showing some different letters. Now, these are all arbitrary distances. It doesn't really matter how far you move stuff. You just kind of want 2 blocks here, or you can make a stack of blocks. If you want this guy to jump on top of a big pyramid, you can do that too. But 2 is going to be fine. And now it's time for us to start animating. Now, here's how I want everybody to do this. I want you to click on the Auto Key button. Make sure that that is red. Auto key is what we're going to use to make sure that as we move our object around, we automatically drop keyframes and are animating. Next, we need to set the entire duration of our animation. We're going to set this to 100 frames. And I'll go ahead and stretch out my range slider to encompass all of that. Okay, so now I'm going to select letter block group 1, which is the guy here at the back of my scene. And I'm going to hit Shift W. Take a look at what that did. Shift W just placed keyframes on the translation attributes for my object. Basically, that's its motion. We've just said at frame 1, I want this block to be at this position in 3D space. Now, I'm going to come up to frame 90. I'm going to do 3 jumps, each jump being about 30 frames. So that's 30 for one jump, 60 for another jump, 90 for the last jump. Because Auto Key is on, all I need to do is move the block directly to where I want it to be at the end of the animation. And if I want it to be precise, I can jump over to one of the orthographic views and just carefully set the block down right on top. Make a few adjustments here, and that looks pretty good. Now, we have some basic animation. Now, I said I was going to do one thing, but I'm actually going to do something else. Because is there anybody at this point, I'm just going to ask, who is trying to animate along with me? You can just answer me inside of BuzzNet. Okay. Trying to. I got a yes. There's not that many people left, so I don't really feel too bad. Okay. If you're just watching, this part is already nicely recorded. There's already a great animation version. So, I mean, even if you don't get it done right now, you literally can walk away from this right now and jump over to the streaming system and watch the same thing being done in the previous episode of this workshop. And now that I've stalled, there you go. Okay, so now I'm going to slide up here to frame 30. And notice translate Y has interpolated up to 1. What does that mean exactly? Well, that means that as our block is going forward, see how it's lifting up into the air? We don't want that. We want it to stay on the ground. So I'm going to come over here to frame 30 and take translate Y and set it to 0, and that'll set it back down on the table. So now you see we're sliding across the table, and then we start to lift up again. And again, because of Auto Key, we changed the value and it automatically placed our next keyframe. Next, I'm going to go to frame 60, and notice we've now interpolated to about a value of 2. We're going to set that to 0 as well. So we slide across the table between 1 and 30. We slide again across between 30 and 60. And then between 60 and 90, we sweep up on top of our blocks. All right. Pretty easy so far. Now it gets fun. I'm going to come over here to frame 15. That's right in between 1 and 30. Well, pretty close to it anyway. I'm just going to lift the block up into the air by an arbitrary amount. It really doesn't matter how far up you go. And now as I scrub back and forth, look at what we have. We go up, we come back down. The motion, however, is not perfect. As a matter of fact, there's a little bit more of a wave to it than anything else, and I'll demonstrate that here in just a moment. In the meantime, let's go to frame 45, and we'll pull up just a little bit higher. So we jump up, and then we go up a little higher for the next jump. Then at frame 75, we'll pull up even higher. And it looks more like the block is waving up and down as opposed to bouncing. But we have the basis of our motion in place, and now it's time for us to take a look at the graph editor and start adjusting our motion curves. As I demonstrated earlier in Photoshop, Maya automatically produces an interpolation curve in between every pair of keyframes. Now we're not only going to look at that, but we're going to edit it to change the nature of this animation. So, here's how we're going to do that. I want you to go to Window, Animation Editors, and open up a graph editor. Now I'm going to, well, there's a couple of different ways we could do this. Let's try it a different way. We could open up the graph editor as a floating window, and if you have a separate monitor, that's a really nice way to work. If you don't have a separate monitor, go to Panels, Layouts, maybe under Saved Layouts. I'll bet we have one under Saved Layouts that would work just great. Yep. Under Saved Layouts, you'll see Persp Graph. And this automatically splits your scene up between a perspective view and the graph editor. And here you can see all of those animation curves. So the first thing I want you to do is to select Translate X, Y, and Z. You can do that with a Shift key. So select Translate X, Translate Y, and Translate Z. Then press the F key. It'll just allow us to focus up specifically on those curves and see what they're all doing. Now, let's just look at Translate Z. Translate Z is doing something very interesting that I am not a big fan of. Notice the shape of the curve. Anybody left in BuzzNet who'd care to explain to me what this curve is defining? What type of motion does this style of curve actually define? Forward motion? Well, actually, that's not true at all. It's just motion that happens to be along the z-axis. Good. I'm happy that you responded, though. Ryan, can you tell me what type of motion is defined here? I'll just ask people specifically. Don't leave me hanging, man. I know you're there. Left-right motion? Okay. You're thinking in the wrong... You're not thinking in the direction I want you to. Just think of how the motion will work. These curves are just acceleration curves, if you want to look at them that way. It's how the computer is interpolating going from this point to this point. Notice the shape of the curve. You see how it starts flat, and then it gets steeper, and then it flattens out again? What that means, and Wick has called it an ease in, ease out curve, and that's correct. It means that the motion will begin slowly, and then it'll speed up, and then it'll slow back down. Now, Risen Force said, is what I said close. Increased velocity, that's half the story. It's increasing velocity because we're going from a flat curve. By the way, a perfectly flat curve is no motion. It's kind of like being dead. If you flatline, there's nothing. We go from a flat curve to a steep curve, but then back to a flat curve. That means we're speeding up and slowing down. I want our forward momentum to be constant. So I'm going to select both of the keyframes here, like so, and click on this button for linear tangents, and that straightens out the curve so that now we're moving forward at a constant rate. We are neither accelerating nor decelerating in our forward motion. All right, with that done, let's switch over to Translate Y. Now, Translate Y is giving us some really weird motion. We're waving, and you can actually see that. You can see the shape of that wave. Do objects bounce like this? Of course they don't. When an object bounces, it strikes the ground. There's like a point where you can see it. The great thing about Translate Y when you're doing your first bouncing ball or bouncing block in this case is that you can really visualize what that bounce is supposed to look like. But if you wanted to look at it from a technical standpoint, the shape of this curve means that we're speeding up. We're actually lifting off the ground very slowly, and we're going faster, like there's some sort of a rocket engine applied to our block. And then we start to fall, but before we hit the ground, we're slowing back down again because the slope is flattening back out. We can't do that. That doesn't look realistic. So what I want you to do is to select all of the keyframes along the bottom of the curve. There are 4 of them in this case. I want you to go to Tangents and choose Break Tangents. Now what that allows us to do is take these tangent lines that go out of each and every curve and bend them in different directions. There is a method to this, and those of you who are coming from Max or Blender might be a little frustrated by it, so you've been warned. you must select the keyframe, then select the tangent, then use middle mouse to make your adjustment. So let's do it on the next key. Select the keyframe. This time I'll select the left tangent, and then adjust with middle mouse. And my goal here is to move these handles until I make a little point. And now, look at that motion up in the viewport. We have a nice bounce. You can almost feel it. Boing. So, select the keyframe, select the tangent, pull up, select tangent, pull up. Final keyframe, grab that tangent, pull up. And now, if we scrub back through, we have nice bouncing. You can play back if you want to. If you hit play and you're getting something that is very, very fast, like this, please understand that you can right-click and go to playback speed and set that to real time, and you'll get the actual speed that you were animating. So that's just right-clicking on the timeline. All right. So at this point, you would have your block bouncing nicely, and really this is the crux right here. There's only two important parts. Make sure your forward momentum is a straight curve. I know that sounds funny to say, but it's an interpolation curve that is linear. You want a straight line. And then your translate Y, or your up and down motion, should have points each time you dip down to land on something. That's really all there is to it. Okay, but we're not quite done yet. Just for showing off, we're going to make this block do little flips while it bounces. So to do this, it's very, very easy. We're going to start here at frame 1 and hit Shift-E. Remember, E is our rotate tool, so Shift-E places a keyframe on rotation. And I just want you to go right up to frame 30 when we're sitting back on the ground. Get your rotate tool out, and if you hold down J, this is real easy. You can just rotate around 180 degrees. And you're already done because you're using auto key. So, bump. He just lands right on his head. Then come over to 60, hold down J, and rotate him back around, stand him back up on his feet. So, push him up to 360. Then finally, I want him to be landing on his feet again, so we're going to come up here to 90 and rotate him around 720. So he does a full flip on this third one. And if you want to take a look at that curve, there's what it looks like. It's kind of boring, actually. And really, that's it. The scene is now animated. At this point, your next step would be to do a couple of test renders. So, I mean, I would just select, get a nice view in the camera and just tap the render key and see what you get. Looks pretty good. And then it's time to produce your final render. Now, producing your render is actually a pretty easy thing, but here's just some things to keep in mind when doing it. You're going to start off by going into your render globals. Always start in the common tab. The common tab is going to be your base settings for the render in general. So let's just start at the top. File name prefix, without that being set, you're just using the scene name, and that's perfectly fine in our case. That shouldn't be a problem at all. Image format, Maya IFF. A lot of compositing programs read IFFs these days, including Photoshop, if you want to just render something out and play with it in Photoshop. But if you want to change it to another format, of course you can. For now, just leave it at IFF if you're totally new to Maya. Next, we have to change frame animation extension. This is the format that will be used to number our frames. This is currently set to name.extension, which means we're only rendering a single frame. We don't want that. We want to set this to name.number.extension. Now you have a lot of different things to choose from depending on your operating system, if you're running Unix or Mac OS. But if you're running Windows, it's going to be name.number.extension. Or you can do name_number extension. What do you know? That's preference. Just make sure the extension is at the end or Windows will get morbidly confused. Now we're going to take the frame padding and increase that to 3. Why are we doing that? Because some programs cannot count. And then you'll go to like 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Actually, what? No, I'm sorry. It's 0, 1, 10, 11. It's a nightmare trying to count when a computer doesn't know how to count. So just pad everything out to 3, and you'll get a few extra zeros in your name so that everything stays nice and even. Next, scroll down. Your start frame is 1. Your end frame is 100. It's basically our animation plus 10 frames as a buffer. Renderable camera is fine for perspective. I would actually do 640 by 320, which is kind of like HD aspect ratio, but whichever way you want to do it is fine. Wick, do you need me to run through the animation one more time for you? I'll do the whole thing all over again for you if you need me to. I won't pause, but I can do it one more time. It is that easy. But speak up. Speak now or forever do nothing with your mouth. All right. Let me finish this real quick. So 640 by 320. That's a pretty good resolution. That should be the same as 720p chopped down into quarters, if I remember correctly. Yeah, you will probably have to watch this video again. I understand. It is getting kind of late. But I will give you guys another stab at the animation, just because it is kind of a nice thing. Next, because we're using Mental Ray, here's what I would do. I'd go to Quality, set your quality over to Preview. If you set it too much higher than this, it'll just take forever to render. You can do Preview with Motion Blur if you want to, and that will turn on Motion Blur, which is very nice. I would leave Motion Blur at no deformation. You don't have anything that is sculpting. Okay, so that's it. All we've done. And just a quick run back through our settings, okay? The only thing we changed is we changed frame animation extension to name.number.extension, padding of 3. You can see how that gives you some extra zeros to work with. Start frame was 1, end frame is 100. I really don't care what resolution you choose. I mean, if you want to do like full HD 720, you can totally render out to that if you want to. Oh yeah, and it should be 640 by 360. I can do math, I promise. Okay. So now, with that, the only other thing is we went to Quality and we set it to Preview Motion Blur. I am not going to render this out on camera because it just takes too long. Finally, to line up your shot, if you look here in your toolbar for the viewport, you have the resolution gate. This allows you to see exactly what is going to render. And so you can use this as a nice preview to make sure you're capturing all of your motion. And if you clip out a little bit of the screen, sometimes that looks really nice, so keep that in mind. Just pick an angle that you think looks good. I would also do a couple of quick test renders. All right, really quick, for you, Wick, I'm going to redo all of the animation. Here's how. I'm going to rewind back here to frame 1, select all of my motion or all of my different attributes that I've animated, right-click, and choose Delete Selected. We have no more animation. From the beginning. Begin by pressing Shift-W to place your first translate keyframe here at the back of the table at frame 1. Go to frame 90. Really all you're doing here at frame 90 is setting your block on top of his buddies over here. Okay, so once you've got that, you've got some motion. Now, I'm going to do things in a very, very slightly different order this time around. We're going to take Translate Z, which if I select Translate Z here in the graph editor, which if you need to know how I got to that one more time, because I guess I'll do the whole thing again, go to Save Layouts and choose Persp Graph. That breaks your view up into the perspective view in the graph editor. So select Translate Z and hit F. That shows you this poor S-curve, which we don't want to keep. So I'm just going to select those keys, and I'll just go ahead and linearize those right now. so they're nice and straight. That just means we are moving at a constant rate right up to the top. Now we still have an S-curve here on our upward motion. Don't stress that. We got a lot of work to do on that. Okay, so Wick, do you have this? Good. All right, we're going to go to frame 30, take translate Y and just 0 it out. That sets it right back down on the table. We're going to go to frame 60 and do the same. So that's it. It stays on the table until it gets to 60, 90, and then it hops up. Now, I don't have a lot of space here, so I'm kind of making do. At frame 15, we pick the block up into the air. You see how that automatically makes a keyframe because of auto key. Up, back down. At 45, we do the same thing, just a little bit higher. And if you need to know if it's higher, your graph editor will tell you. You could take this key and you could actually move it. A quick way to do that is to hold down Shift to constrain your motion to vertical, and just middle mouse drag it up. And now you know for certain that you're going up a little higher than you were before. But that may be a little bit too high, so what I'm going to do is pull this guy down and pull this guy down too. So up, down, and then one last jump, so I'm going to come to frame 75, pull this way up into the air, and now I have 3 jumps. How's that, Wick? You with me? Frantically trying to key. Well, you're really not even keying, man. You got that first key in. Really, all you should just be doing is auto keying. So you're just sliding over to a certain time, and then you're moving your block. Okay. Now comes the fun part. We need to adjust those tangents, because right now, as you can see, that block is not jumping. It's waving up and down. And if you scrub or hit play on your end, that's what you'll see as well. And that's not good. So I want you to select every keyframe where the block is on the ground. Go to Tangents and choose Break Tangents. There's a button for it in the toolbar as well. It looks like a little broken tangent. Right here. You can click that if you want to. Now, this part's easy. Just select a tangent handle. So I just generally will marquee select them. So I'll select a key, marquee select the tangent handle, and then just middle mouse drag and pick that up. You're just kind of tracing out a nice arc. That's really all there is to it. Grab the next keyframe, start with the left handle, pull the left handle up, select the right handle, pull the right handle up. Next one, left handle up. Again, I'm moving with middle mouse. Right handle up. Final one, pull that left handle up. You're actually done. Let me know when you get this done, Wick. I'll just sit here and drag back and forth. Boom, boom, boom. Done. Got it. Awesome. Now comes the easy part. We're going to animate our rotation. So we hit Shift-E right here at frame 1 to key our initial rotation. Come to your first landing, which should be at frame 30. Get your rotate tool out. Hold down J for discrete rotation and rotate by 180 degrees. That'll land him right smack on his head. Excuse me. Come to frame 60. Rotate him back around 360 again. Well, I'll back around 360, excuse me. So it'll land him back on his feet. So it's head, then feet again. For that last jump between, don't even worry about it. Just go to frame 90 and rotate it to 720. That's going to give him a full flip before he lands. You don't even have to really worry about the curves here. It's already going to look pretty good. And if you wanted to, I'm going to show you something real quick. I'm going to undo all that. You could just do it all by the numbers. If you knew what all your rotations were going to be, you could start right here at frame 1 and hit Shift-E, go to 30, take Rotate X and punch in 180 degrees. Jump to 60, punch in 360, and then jump up here to 90 and just punch in 720. And it'll do the same thing. So you can do it all by the numbers if you really want to. You got that, Wick? That's it. You're a professional animator. Congratulations. Boing, boing, boing. And that's it, folks. The last thing we need to do is set up our final render, which really is just find an angle that you like. Do a couple of test renders until you like what you see. Then press F6, and you're going to go to Render, Batch Render. Now, I'm not actually going to click on this because it's going to take about 30 seconds per frame, so we're talking several minutes to get this done. And I'm actually going to go ahead and wrap things up. But this is your last step. Just go to Render and click Batch Render and give it a few minutes to actually finish. Now, if you need to monitor the actual rendering process, there's a way you can do it. Let me go ahead and just start up a batch render. Your result line will tell you what's going on the whole time you're working. So rendering with mental ray, and there it goes. So percentage of rendering done, it'll give you some numbers. If you open up your script editor, which is done with a little tiny button in the lower right-hand corner of the interface, you can see what frame you're working on. And I actually never saved this file. That's embarrassing. But it does kind of make a nice testament to my stability, at least on my box. You can see what frame we're on and what percentage we are along the way. If for some reason you need to stop a batch render, just go to Render, Cancel Batch Render, and click Yes. Now, when you're done, you will need to check your frames. Maya has a great system for checking your frames. It is called F check. Isn't that great? Like, checking frames. It's amazing. So what I'm going to do, you guys can't see my Start button, but I'm going to click on Start, and right there in my little run line in Windows, I'm going to just type F check, and that opens that right up. We just go to File, Open Animation, and you should have a list of frames when you're done that looks something like this. Just double-click the first one. They will all load in. And there you go. And you have an animation. That's it, folks. That is my entire Maya 2013 workshop from zero to hero. So if you have any questions that you'd like to work in, now would be a really good time because I'd like to go ahead and wrap things up. We over-budgeted a little bit on our time, but that's totally cool. I just hope everybody was able to get some useful stuff out of this. Yes, Wick, that's our goal, is to do more of these workshops. And I'm not seeing many questions roll in. If you have some further questions and you'd like to ask them, please feel free to shoot me a PM and I'll help you out as quick as I can. But I want to thank everybody for sticking with me tonight. It's been a heck of a ride, and I will catch you all on our next class and/or workshop. Until then, thank you all very much, and thank you so much for your support of 3D Buzz. Take care, everyone.